Have you ever bought something and then been terribly disappointed when you got it? I expect it is as common experience with online shopping these days as it was when we used to order from catalogs. My son-in-law found a great deal online when he was shopping for shoes for his wedding this summer. Best of all, a portion of the proceeds went to a humanitarian charity. He was so excited, and he watched daily for the delivery. When the day finally arrived, he was a little flummoxed to find that it was a relatively small package that had been delivered to his door. What do you think was inside? My guess was that it was a very small pair of shoes, for a child perhaps. Was that your guess too? Well, when my son-in-law opened the box, he saw one shoe. One shoe! He was so disappointed, and he was sure that there had been a shipping mistake. But upon checking the website and his order, he saw that each shoe is sold separately. To get a pair, you must check both left and right foot boxes. He was so angry. I mean, who sells single shoes? I mean, other than this company, obviously. Is there really a market out there for single shoes? I suppose it's perfect for people who have differently sized feet. But it was a huge disappointment to him. Sometimes things are not what they seem, or what we assume they are. And you remember that old saying about assume making something I shouldn't say here of you and me. Well, a number of years ago, I bought something called a pomelo at the grocery store. You might have seen them. They look like gigantic grapefruit. I thought this was excellent. I really like grapefruit, and I was already imagining a supersized breakfast treat. But I didn't know a pomelo is at least 75% peel. Inside was maybe even less fruit than the average grapefruit. I was so disappointed. The expectation of what was inside did not match the outside appearance. Or maybe, let's say, at one time or another, you picked up a plantain, mistaking it for a banana. Perhaps thinking you would get extra banana for your buck with those supersized fellas. It's easy to make the mistake, especially when they're green. They look similar on the outside, other than the size, but inside they are very, very different. They have totally different tastes and textures. And you'd likely be very disappointed if you swapped one for the other in a recipe. Trusting something that just basically looks like what you need for something as important as a key ingredient in a recipe or in your life will only lead to disaster. And Jesus says as much here in Matthew 7. He warns us to give serious consideration about who we choose to follow, especially when it comes to faith leaders. We can all think of countless examples of high visibility pastors who have fallen from positions of esteem and privilege when evidence of financial corruption or sexual misconduct had been revealed. Millions and millions of dollars from their followers had lined the pockets and elevated these people's lifestyles along with their sense of entitlement. The gospel message they preached was tainted and corrupted right along with their reputation when the fall came. Closer to home, we can think of stories of corruption and abuse by members of the clergy, leaving members of their congregations and even their denomination disillusioned and frequently disgusted, and oftentimes totally rejecting the church and its message. Jesus says, be wary of false preachers who smile a lot, dripping with practiced sincerity. Chances are they are out to rip you off some way or the other. Don't be impressed with charisma. Look for character. Who preachers are is the main thing, not what they say. A genuine leader will never exploit your emotions or your pocketbook. These diseased trees with their bad apples are going to be chopped down and burned. I was reading from the Message translation there. There are those who purport to serve God and follow Jesus, but in truth, they only follow their own wants and wishes, and they serve only themselves. In the Old Testament, we hear about false prophets quite a bit. They might be those whose predictions didn't come true, but as often as not, this title refers to those who were not commissioned of God to speak for God. They used God for personal profit. True prophets always tried to show people the truth, but false prophets willfully, deliberately tried to deceive people, concealing the truth from them. Jesus says, knowing the correct password, saying, Master, Master, for instance, isn't going to get you anywhere with me. What is required is a serious obedience, doing what my Father wills. I can see it now at the final judgment, thousands strutting up to me and saying, Master, we preached the message, we bashed the demons, our super spiritual projects had everyone talking. And you know what I'm going to say? You missed the boat. All you did was use me to make yourselves important. You didn't impress me one bit. You're out of here. Again from the Message. Nothing, it seems, makes Jesus angrier than seeing someone with authority take advantage of people, especially the weaker ones. Matthew records Jesus as saying that anyone who welcomes a child like he did, with arms wide open and being assured that they had a place of value in God's kingdom, is doing his work. But look out if they instead cause harm to even one of those little ones. God's anger and punishment will make being thrown into the lake wearing concrete shoes seem preferable. Those are strong words from Jesus. So we know that he's deadly serious about this. It ought to make every minister squirm to read this passage. I mean, we all say, surely it isn't me. But we must constantly do self-check-in to ensure that our actions are in line with our calling. Leaders in our churches have a sacred obligation to do no harm and to lead in a way that shows care and compassion for all of God's little ones, regardless of their size or age. You are all precious to God and must be treated that way. Never as a mark for financial gain or to shore up a minister's ego or even to finance a church's survival. Jesus says, don't be fooled by flashy appearances or charisma. Look deeper for character. Make sure that the inside matches the outside. Only then will you know if you can trust that person to speak truth into your life. Years ago, I think there was an unspoken agreement among ministers that they needed to present to the world the picture of a perfect family. It likely came about because of Paul's letter to Timothy that basically says you can't trust a man to lead a church if he can't even lead his own family. As a result, normal family stresses and dramas that are part of all of our lives simply couldn't be shared by a minister with his congregation. My husband John acknowledged that, like many PKs, preachers' kids, he was likely quite a test for his parents trying to keep up the image of the perfect family. He told me that his small town's barbershop conveniently had a pool table in the back room for clients. One day, his dad came in the front door of the shop for a haircut, and John had to hustle out of the back door. Whether it was because he was likely skipping school or because he was shooting pool, he knew he would be in trouble. Maybe some other guys could get away with it, but not the minister's son. Thankfully, somehow, somewhere in the last 40 years, ministers and their families have begun to be acknowledged as human. Maybe it was simply impossible to keep secrets in a multimedia world, or maybe the church caught up with the psychology that said that it was healthier for a congregation to have an authentic minister lead them, someone with failures and flaws just like them. It made a minister relatable. Now, the point wasn't to make sin more acceptable, but to allow people to talk to their ministers openly and to keep ministers humble and honest. For one thing has always been true: the heart of a minister is eventually revealed through his or her life and actions. It will come out. And that can be praiseworthy, or it can be a problem. Just as it would have been hard to trust a minister of a teetotaling church if you met him in the liquor store in the past, so it would be difficult to trust a minister today if she had just led a marriage enrichment workshop and then you discovered that she was secretly having an affair. How could you believe these pastors' guidance if they themselves didn't live in a way that showed they believed what they taught to be true for themselves as well as for you? Jesus promises that these leaders will be held responsible for the ways that they've misled people in their care. It won't matter if they call on Jesus' name while they took advantage and did harm. In fact, having used Jesus' holiness to cover their deception is considered a horrible sin. I'm sure, like me, you can think of countless ways that faith and obedience to God were used as weapons of subjugation of people throughout the ages. Indigenous peoples, people of color, women and children, and the poor. From residential school abusers to faith-healing fraudsters, covering their sin with the cloak of religious authority. The fruit of that tree was rotten to the core. And that tree deserved to be chopped down and thrown into the fire to get rid of its blight. It breaks my heart every time I hear someone say that the reason that they don't attend church any longer is because of some harm that their pastor or priest has done to them. Sometimes it's big things, and sometimes it's small things, like disappointments, not being available for them when they needed them. But each time, it's been the conduct of the minister that has convinced the person that the church is not a safe or welcoming place for them. It does not matter what our intended message is if they don't trust us, if they don't trust the institutional church. Now, Jesus wanted those who heard him to know that he could be trusted. He was prepared to walk the talk. He preached God's love for all and was prepared to die for it. He believed in God's ability to forgive anything, so much that he forgave even those who killed him. Jesus was the real deal. He could easily have been elevated to the leader of the uprising to overthrow Roman rule, but instead he was raised on a cross to overthrow the power of sin and death. Thank God that Jesus' message is greater than the church that has been tasked with the ministry of proclaiming the story of Jesus' message to the world. Despite its divine commission, it is true that the church too often reveals its humanity. And this applies to us all, whether we're in the pulpit or whether we're in the pew. Humans can lift you up or they can let you down. Ministers can be honorable or horrible. People can be lousy or loving. To build one's faith on the church can be like building your house on the sand. One rogue wave not only can, but surely will lead to disaster. In the same way, disappointment with one's church leader or congregation can be disheartening and can call into question one's entire faith. But if your faith is in Jesus, your faith is well placed. He will never, ever let you down. He will be the sturdy and the solid rock beneath your feet, no matter what comes in life. Tough times, wild weather, or lousy leadership. He will not fail you. And you, dear ones, the ones who are called to be Jesus' hands and feet and voice in the world, you have an awesome obligation to be true to that commission. In all you say and do, make sure that the truth of Jesus' light and love shines through you, inside and out, so that no one can mistake who you are and who you believe in. Amen.